Okay. I believe Mr. Morgan is representing. You know his full name? Mr. Morgan?
Good afternoon. This is Willie Morgan with the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining in. Did you get that, Jessica? It's under.
Good afternoon. This is Willie Morgan with the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining in. Did you get that, Jessica? Are we all, if we on YouTube? All right, I appreciate everybody joining us. We're going to call the meeting to order. Appreciate everybody being here. These are all new and different times, so I'm going to do my best to run the meeting and try and keep the meeting efficient and in order. If I don't do a good job of that, I apologize ahead of time. So we're going to call the meeting to order. We are going to have some new things that we're going to do just because we're meeting virtually. One of the first things that we're going to do here is we're going to do a roll call of voting EPAC members, and that is necessary for us just to be able to know who's on the call, and it's also necessary because as we have items that require a vote, we're going to do a roll call vote. So Jessica is going to call the roll. I would like for you to respond either here or present. And then when we do a roll call vote, if you would say yes or no relative to how you want to vote, that would be appreciated. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, hearing none, Ms. Jessica, if you would please call the roll of voting EPAC members.
If I pronounced your name wrong, please forgive me. Sean Epps.
Here.
Smokey Davis.
Here.
Smokey Davis. Jason Krause.
Here.
Jason Prowse is here.
Blake Bridwell. Blake Bridwell.
Carolyn Miskey.
Carolyn Miskey. Andy Metz or Dan Lambert. Gwen Giddle.
Here.
Stephen Seeley.
Here.
Clint Shealy or Joey Jaco.
Here.
Bill Stangler.
Here.
Larry Brazel or Ed Schuler. David Roten. Chris Clausen.
Here.
Jay Nicholson. Chester Sansbury.
Here.
Brett Poole. Brett Poole. John Carrick.
Here.
Todd Cullum.
Present.
Tim Baker. Brent Richardson.
Here.
Ron Anderson.
Here.
Adam Delk.
call him again.
Adam Delk,
I see him.
His picture's there.
Adam Dale, are you there?
He's talking too.
I see his lips moving.
Eric Hussein,
Here.
John Thompson,
This is Paul
Present.
Livingston, Johnny.
Mike Dawson,
Here.
Willie Morgan,
Here.
Michelle Dickerson or Wayne Schuler, and Don Wood or Trip P.
Here.
Jessica, did you get a good record of who was here and any names you need to call again?
No,
Paul- You got Paul Livingston?
Yes, sir, Mr. Livingston, we got you. This was a roll call for voting EPAT members, but we do have we're gonna note that you were here. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Carolyn Miskey. I couldn't get it to work through my computer, so I'm in by phone
I
for
got
City of
you.
Casey.
I
Okay,
got you.
wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for making adjustments. We appreciate it. All right. So, we're now on item 3, on the agenda, which is, amendment to committee rules of procedure, for virtual meetings, enclosure 1. And just a brief explanation, all we're doing is making an adjustment to our rules of procedures so that we can have virtual meetings, just like we're having now. So is item 3 on the agenda. If I could get a motion, please.
So moved.
Move for approval.
Ron Anderson.
Second.
Second.
So that was a motion from Smokey Davis and a second from who?
Ron Anderson.
From Johnny Hussein.
guys.
All right, so second from Ron Anderson. All right, Jessica, if you would call the roll, please.
John Epps,
Yes?
Mr. Chairman, I got a question before we vote. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
just had one question before we vote. Is there going to be a
Yes, sir. Please go
time
ahead.
expiration? Can you hear me?
You breaking up. I'm catching about every third word.
Well, that might be good for you. I wanted to ask, is this going to have a time expiration on it?
No, sir, it was not intended to have a time expiration on it. And we tried to make the language that we used for it consistent with the language that we approved, that the COG Board Executive Committee approved for the overall COG Board. And that
Yeah,
language did not have a time expiration in it.
We talked about it the other day in the Transportation Committee, and it just it gives the ability that this thing doesn't run indefinitely, where it becomes a normal practice where we start meeting virtually more rather than how we have historically met in person. Our county council in Lexington, we have to renew it every 60 days. So that would just the only thing I would raise, that wouldn't be indefinite. And I know that the governor every 15 days has to reauthorize his resolution too. So it's just a word of caution. If you don't have a timeline on this, you're going to continue. If you start using it now, then it may be the practice that we use it from here on out, which I would strongly oppose.
And Councilman, what we're looking at here, it says that meetings will normally be held in a physical location unless that's unavailable or inappropriate. So the default would be to meet in person.
I agree with that, but I guess that leaves that up into interpretation about, who decides whether or not it's better for us to meet virtually or in person. Is that the chair call? Is that the call of the committee? And that's why,
The chairman.
yeah, well, there you are. So we got one person makes that decision for the entire committee. Again, we put an expiration date on all of our virtual or electronic meetings. Again, it'd be just a word that I would ask for caution. We consider that in transportation committee, and I know, like I said, we've done that at the county council.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Cullum. I think the overall intention is when we are able to get back to in-person meetings, I think they are much more effective, and I like them much better as well. I will tell you, as a subcommittee of the COG, we felt that it was important to be consistent as much as possible with the language that was approved by the executive committee.
Okay, well, I can tell you what, we can leave it alone. If I see that this thing's gonna run on way on into the months in it, I just want you to know, and the committee know, I'm gonna bring it up again, and I'm gonna ask that it be amended to a 60-day time frame. It has to be reauthorized every 60 days, but we can move on.
No, I appreciate that, and at such time as the executive committee approves that, we will take that back up in this committee. I really feel strongly that we want to be consistent with what the executive committee is doing and not get out of step with our overall governing body.
Okay, we can work, I can work within those parameters.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments before we call the roll for a vote? All right, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments before we call the roll?
Call for questions.
All right. Please call the roll, Ms. Jessica.
Sean Epps,
Yes.
Smokey Davis,
Yes.
Jason Krause,
Yes.
Carolyn Miskey,
Yes.
Gwen Giddle,
Yes.
Stephen Seeley,
Yes.
Clint Shealy.
Joey Jaco, yes.
Okay. Bill Stangler,
Yes.
Ed Schuler,
Yes.
Chris Clausen,
Yes.
Jay Nicholson,
Yes.
Chester Sansberry,
Yes.
John Carrick,
Yes.
Todd Cullum,
Yes.
Brent Richardson,
Yes.
Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Adam Delk,
Yes.
Tarek Hussein,
Yes, and also I have Dr. Thompson online. I don't know if you can hear him.
John Thompson,
Yes.
Mike Dawson,
Yes.
Willie Morgan,
Yes.
and Don Wood. Don Wood,
Right. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4. approval of the minutes from the January 15th, 2020 meeting. Gregory, I believe you had a revision to the meeting minutes that somebody brought up. If you could touch on that, please, so everybody can know.
Just one minor edit under number 6, planning project updates. I made reference to the project kicking off in spring of 2019, and that should be spring of 2020.
Hope everybody's had a chance to review the minutes. If I could get a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve. Dawson here.
Guidell, second.
Make a recommendation that we approve by acclamation unless there is a negative.
Okay, let's see if we got any comments. Anybody else somebody may have reviewed the minutes and may have a comment. So let's see if we got a comment, if that's okay, Mr. Dawson.
Sounds good to me.
Does anybody have any questions or comments or see anything in the meeting minutes? All right, hearing none. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just want to make the point. We did have a lot of dialogue and questions and answers during the discussion. I don't know if there needs to be a reference to that or if it's irrelevant to the discussion, but we vetted. I know it was just there the Fairfield project was there just as an introduction to what's going on. You know, I don't know if it's important to the discussion that's about to happen today. I just wanted to point out that we did have a lot of back and forth that meeting.
Yes, sir. We did.
I tried to summarize. It was rather than do verbatim. There was a lot of discussion that kind of went back and forth. So I tried to summarize and highlight the primary bullet points of the things that were discussed and the answers that the applicants provided in response to those questions.
And that was under item number 3. Is that right, Gregory? Am I in the right spot?
Correct. Yes.
So it is, we tried to represent that in the meeting. And I agree with you. We did have a lot of discussion. When Gregory and I talked about this, his intent was to try and summarize, not try and provide word for word. Is that acceptable, Jay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Maybe I just skimmed through it too quick. I didn't pick up that there was the discussion. I mean, it's a thorough, detailed review of it. It didn't strike me that we had a lot of question and answer. It felt more involved than what I was reading, but I'm good with it as long as the group is.
All right. Any other questions or comments about the meeting minutes? If hearing none, then we're gonna consider the meeting minutes approved, and we're gonna move on. All right, nothing to the negative, then the meeting minutes are approved. All right. So we are now on item number 5, which is planning project updates. Mr. Gregory Sprouse, Three Rivers Watershed Based Plan.
So thank you, Sean. I would like to just wanted to take a few minutes to go over 3 projects that 2 of which have been previously discussed with the committee and will involve input from the committee at some point. So I wanted to provide an update on where we were and discuss the timeline of those projects. So the first one that we will be discussing is the Three Rivers Watershed Based Plan. And as we mentioned in the January meeting, I believe we introduced this to the committee when we applied for a grant in fall of last year, and then announced to the committee in January that we were awarded the grant. Let's go back 2 slides, I think. And so we're in the process of kicking that project off. We do have a signed grant agreement in place with DHEC. And just as a recap, we are we've been working with the stakeholders and partners to develop a watershed-based plan based on the EPA 9 elements for what we're calling the Three Rivers watershed area, which is the TMDL portions of the Lower Central Broad and Congaree. This is a watershed that has experienced bacteria impairment, and we have gotten word from DHEC that they will be developing a TMDL at some point in the future. So working with the stakeholders over a number of years, we decided the next logical step for the group would be to try to develop a watershed-based plan to give us an action strategy for trying to address the bacteria impairments. So we received the grant from the DHEC Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. It has been awarded and it will run through June of next year. And just as a recap, that the primary project partners, which are also serving as our project advisory committee on this, are representatives from the MS4, the City of Columbia, Richland County, Lexington County, Town of Lexington, Irma, West Columbia, Casey, and we've had participation from SCDOT, as well as Bill Stangler with Congaree Riverkeeper and Central CMCOG. Excellent. So the primary scope of work for this project is we are in the process of procuring a consultant to assist with some of the technical aspects of developing the plan. And the plan itself will consist of an existing conditions analysis, which the big part of that, per those EPA requirements, is doing a pollutant source assessment that will help us to identify the causes and sources of bacteria pollution and establish bacteria load reduction goals. We also will have a strong stakeholder coordination and outreach component that will go hand in hand with that existing conditions analysis. And that will consist of conducting focus groups for both identifying urban and rural sources, and then establishing some subcommittees that will help us on other aspects of potential impairments. The big one that we wanted to bring to the attention of this committee is that we will be establishing a water and sewer utility subcommittee and expect to have some of those focus group and subcommittee meetings starting this summer. And the big important part of that is convening the utilities to help us identify potential causes of bacteria impairments in the watershed, as well as potential mitigation strategies. We'll also be doing some public meetings and conducting a survey. And then the last piece of this is that we're going to do our best to coordinate this with other planning processes, stakeholder groups, and committees. So we plan to bring this back before EPAC periodically throughout the grant period to update the committee on the status of the project, as well as to get input, particularly related to some of the things that would come out of that water and sewer utility subcommittee work. The last important piece of this is the DHEC requires us, because of the grant funding, to do a separate source water protection component and to look at climate change considerations and the impact that those things will have on the types of projects and strategies that we are going to be recommending to help mitigate the bacteria impairments within the watershed. So that's something that we will probably definitely be coming back to the committee with as we move forward with the plan. And then the final piece of this is just as we go through that stakeholder coordination and outreach, look at the pollutant source assessment and existing conditions inventory, we will be bringing that together in developing some very specific project policy and program recommendations. And then per those EPA requirements, we have to have a very a prioritized implementation plan that also looks at potential funding sources. So this will be a guiding document that all the stakeholders involved can use to continue to work together to address the issues in this watershed. So the primary goal here is just to keep this on the mind of the committee members, as we will be reaching out to them individually to bring them into the planning process, and we'll be bringing this back before the committee as we move forward with the plan.
So I have a question, and then we'll open it up to the floor for other questions and comments. The Water and Sewer Utilities Subcommittee, how will the members of that committee be selected and or identified?
Looking at extending invitations to representatives from the public and private utilities that are providing service within the study area and maybe adjacent areas that could have an impact within the watershed.
Okay.
So that's probably a good number of folks who are represented on this committee as well.
How many people do you expect to have on that committee?
I haven't gotten that far yet, but it's really probably, it's kind of, I guess the plan is we envision that being kind of like a ongoing focus group conversation related to water and sewer utilities. And so it'll really be anybody who is interested in participating in that and has good knowledge of the operations of the utilities within the watershed.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
This is Gwen Guidell. I'd like to ask a question or really comment. I appreciate that you're doing the stakeholder coordination. As you are coordinating with the other plans, the Gills Creek Watershed Association is in the process right now of doing a similar watershed plan. I don't know if you've reached out to them or not as you are moving forward.
Yeah, that's one of the big pieces of our existing conditions analysis is coordinating and inventorying all of the other watershed-based plans in and around our study area. So there are a good number of them that have been done both within our watershed as well as in adjacent areas. So that will be, that's something we have initiated contact with them, and we will be doing that throughout the process.
Great, thank you.
That's a great comment. Great thing to bring up. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? All right, here none, we're going to move on to 5B, which is Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Okay, so on a related to that plan, there will be a lot of overlap, both in terms of timing, but also in terms of content, I believe. But we are about to kick off an update to the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan for the Central Midlands area. And so if you're not familiar with the hazard mitigation planning process, this is based on federal regulations, 44 CFR 201.6, which requires local mitigation plans, where local governments must adopt a FEMA-approved mitigation plan in order to be eligible to participate in mitigation grant programs from FEMA, which in South Carolina is administered through SCMD. And historically, in a lot of areas of the state, we do this through multi-jurisdictional plans, which can be adopted by local government. So by a local government participating in a regional planning process and then adopting the regional plan as their local plan, they meet the federal requirements to be eligible for the FEMA grant funding. The last regional multi-jurisdictional plan we did here was updated and approved in October 2016. So that regional plan will be expiring in October next year. And so last year we applied for a FEMA hazard mitigation grant program to get funding to do the update that we'll be undertaking. So we just got that awarded and are in the process of kicking off that planning process, which per the federal regulations, the primary components are coordinating with local governments and the public on the plan development. We have to do a very extensive natural hazard identification and risk assessment, including a vulnerability assessment. And then the big component of this is the mitigation strategy section, which for each jurisdiction that's participating in the plan, we identify hazard mitigation goals and specific actions that then have to be prioritized by jurisdiction. And the idea is that these provide guidance for local governments to be able to then apply for hazard mitigation funding to implement these projects, which are generally done on a 75-25 cost share. And then finally, there's it's an ongoing planning process that requires review, evaluation, and implementation. And that's part of what this update will accomplish. So we expect it'll be a fairly quick timeline since we got late getting the grant awarded. So we'll be kicking that off in the next month or so, and then working on it over the next year so that we can have a plan ready for submission to FEMA to get approved by the summer of 2021. And then hopefully once we get that back, it can go back to the local governments for adoption by the time that it expires in October of 2021. And then, so I wanted to highlight a couple of things related to this is that mitigation strategy section. There's a big role for water and sewer utilities to play in that planning process. The types of projects, as many of you local government folks probably know, that are eligible for FEMA funding are doing work on pump stations and other utility infrastructure that can be impacted by floods or other types of natural disasters. So it's a really good, we'd like to try to encourage local governments and other partners to look at the FEMA funding as a source of funding for doing some of these much needed infrastructure improvements to mitigate impact from future disasters. So we'll be working again with this committee, bringing this periodically back before the group and reaching out to the local government members to assist us and get involved in that planning process. And then again, we expect, since this is overlapping timing wise with some other plans like the watershed-based plan, we'll do our best to ensure that we're coordinating with that planning process so that stormwater related infrastructure project recommendations that come out of the watershed-based plan could be things that could fit right in with this hazard mitigation planning process, as well as the element related to looking at climate adaptation and resiliency is also something that fits in really nicely with the work that we'll be doing on this mitigation plan. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions on the regional hazard mitigation plan and the details Gregory provided?
Gregory, are you looking for us to reach out to you to give you these goals and actions, or are you planning on sending out like a survey or an email? And you may have covered that. I'm sorry if you did.
So in the past, the way our planning processes work, as we are developing going through the hazard vulnerability assessment, we start convening subcommittees, usually we kind of look at it by county. So we will be working with all the jurisdictions in Lexington County and inviting participants in those subcommittee meetings. And that is probably how we'll initially be reaching out to everyone and trying to get a feel for the goals and strategies by jurisdiction. So we will be reaching out to the city of Casey and other jurisdictions in the next month or so as we get those meetings scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hear none, we're gonna move on to item 5C.
Okay, so the last one, Bill and I talked to the group about the 2019 drought tabletop exercise, which we participated in last year. And this was just a recap, an exercise focusing on drought monitoring and response process in South Carolina, with the goal of identifying gaps in the existing process and increasing awareness of roles and responsibilities for drought planning and response, and then ultimately building partnerships to help with that process. And so we came back to this group with a proposal to host a Midlands drought tabletop exercise. This was something they did down in the Charleston area after participating in the previous one of these tabletop exercises. And the feedback we got was that it was a successful event that really helped strengthen coordination between the different stakeholders and get folks thinking about the drought response process. And so we would like to try and do that here in the Midlands, and we asked for the committee's commitment to participate in that process. But originally our goal was to plan for an in-person workshop in late summer, early fall 2020. And of course, those plans, we're trying to reassess that now because of the current situation. And so one of the questions, because we're working with the South Carolina Climatology Office and the Carolinas Integrated Science and Assessment group that works out of USC to help facilitate that process. They have a really good plan and program in place already, and we're willing to help us put on a local version of it. And so one of the questions that they posed was, considering the current situation, trying to decide, do we want to continue to try and do this as a group in this fall, where we'll likely be doing it as a virtual workshop, which they have indicated they've had some good experiences with in the past, or do we want to try to postpone to plan for the spring, where we can hopefully try to get an in-person meeting or workshop in place. So I just wanted to update everyone that we are still working on this and hoping to put something in place, and that this will actually fit really nicely timing wise with the hazard mitigation plan, because drought is one of the natural hazards that we are required to look at and has a significant impact in the Midlands region. So being able to convene stakeholders specifically talking about this issue could provide a lot of value to the hazard mitigation planning process. So we don't want to put it off any further than spring of 2021. So I guess that is kind of a question for the committee, is to get Vic's thoughts on timing wise and venue, forum, what the best way to proceed with that is.
When you say comments, you're talking about timing and location.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate any guidance the committee is willing to give Gregory relative to timing and location for that. Any comments or thoughts?
Hey, this is Bill. So two things. One, because Gregory put something about drought on the agenda, that's probably why we're going to have flooding later this week. But I am, personally, I would prefer to do this in person if it's at all possible. If that means moving to the spring, that could be how we handle it. I just found that having those conversations around a table when we did the 2019 exercise, really, it allowed people to communicate more and think about things that I think you lose a little bit of when you have to do these things virtually. But I know that there are constraints either way. So it's a personal preference on my end. But we also do have the timelines that we have to be aware of for the mitigation planning and some other pieces.
So you would be in favor of having it spring of 2021 with the idea that you'd rather meet in person?
Yeah, I think we can communicate better around a table together. And I'm sure we can find a venue, but I know that there are potential concerns with that, that pushes it out a little further, and, that assumes that we'll be able to meet in person, by then as well.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Gwen. I'd like just to make a comment. I'd like to support Bill's suggestion that we do this in person. I'm not sure exactly the size or the size of the group anticipating, but I think even if the thing is, we're not sure what's going to happen next spring, whether we'll have a resurgence. But I think if we understand the way that we can do social distancing and plan for a large enough venue, and then my question really was, how many people did we anticipate? So could we kind of think about a meeting space where you could do some social distancing and allow for that interaction?
That's a good question. So maybe a compromise to waiting till spring of 2021, given that none of us know what's going to be going on then. Maybe we try and look and plan for doing it sooner and implement social distancing. Bill, since you commented on it, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think Gwen makes a good point. Is we can kind of plan for a scenario where we might have to do things a little differently, and so a larger space that allows folks to be in the same place, but also having appropriate distance could work as well.
Timing wise, I think it could work out. It would also, it might actually help us to think about the programming of it if we hold it in, or I'd say early spring next year, because we will already be having conversations with stakeholders about drought impacts and everything. So that could help us to think about the types of further discussions we might want to have as a part of this.
All right, sounds good. Any other comments or questions? Or guidance for that matter? All right. So now we're on agenda item number 6, which is old business or new business. Does anybody have any old business or new business that we need to discuss for the good of the order?
This is Bill again. I just wanted to let folks know that the Midlands Rivers Coalition, which several of y'all are a part of, has kicked off our 4th sampling season this month. So that's the howsmyscriver.org website. We do the weekly water quality monitoring on the Broad, Saluda, and Congaree. So if you're curious about water quality, howsmyscriver.org, and we're pulling those samples every week, but probably not a good week this week to go out and get on the water.
Thank you, Bill. We probably should have had that on the agenda. I appreciate you bringing it up. Any other old business or new business for the good of the order? All right, good deal. There's no old business or new business. We're going to adjourn the meeting. Really? Go ahead. That's a great comment as well. I'm hungry too. So I appreciate everybody joining the meeting this way. I know we're all getting used to this new meeting style. I totally agree with Mr. Cullen in his comment earlier. I much prefer meeting in person. But I appreciate everybody joining the meeting and working to participate in this way. And let's all hope and pray that we can get back to some kind of normal in the future where we can all get together and see each other face to face. If there's no other questions or comments, we're going to call this meeting adjourned.
Mr. Sean?
Amen to that, and stay safe.
Yes, sir. Good. Who was that? Somebody said
say amen to your comments and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson.
Johnny with the Richland County, sir. I was just going to ask, I thought we were going to also discuss the new plant that is being proposed at Fairfield County. Is that going to be on another meeting?
So we're anticipating that we will get a submittal from Fairfield County that will be on the next meeting agenda, and that information, when we get it, will go out to the committee for digestion. We have not received this, and Gregory, I want you to correct me if I'm misspeaking here. We have not received that as of yet. So the update that I can provide you is that is still pending. They are still looking at it. We have not received a submittal from them. But we are anticipating that we will receive a submittal from them that will be on the agenda for consideration for the next meeting. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Hey, Mr. Elf, John Thompson, Richland County. How many days in advance will we receive the information to review?
That's a good question. So that's one of the things that Gregory and I have talked about. We have stressed to Fairfield County that they need to get that to the EPAC in time for staff digestion, as well as for the committee digestion. Gregory, have we suggested to them that we have it at least 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time?
Yeah, we asked for the beginning of next month, so that first week in June, which would give us at least 2 weeks ahead of time from the next meeting.
So to answer to your
Great, thank
question,
you.
Dr. Thompson, the direct answer is we have requested that they give that to us at least 2 weeks before the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, so this is Chris Clausen with Fairfield County. We're still trying to solidify the piece of property. We've got it almost under contract, so that's the big thing, what we're waiting on. So once that is in place, we'll be able to finish the PER, and yes, we're shooting to submit at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So it might, to be honest, it might not happen in June, but we'll see. We'll try our hardest to get it in at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance.
I appreciate you offering that up, Chris. So that is the answer, Dr. Thompson. Did you have any other questions about that?
No, sir, Mr. Epps. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments for the good of the order? Old business, new business. All right, everybody stay safe, stay healthy. We appreciate everybody joining, and thank you so much. We're gonna call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.